It was a crisp autumn morning in 2011 when Zosha Kamuri, one of the most experienced cave rescue divers in the Florida Keys, received an emergency call that would test the limits of her bravery and skills. A lone spear fisherman, Handon Khalil, had failed to resurface from the treacherous underwater cave system in the marine sanctuary waters off the coast of Key Largo in the upper Florida Keys. Zosha and her team quickly gathered their specialized gear and sped to the remote cave. The cave entrance opened beneath the surface, requiring a complex, staged decompression descent through the narrow lava tube. Visibility was poor, as the cave's waters were thick with planktonic blooms, and silt kicked up from previous diving activity. As Zosha made her way deeper into the lightless labyrinth, she picked up Handon's faint distress signals on her locator equipment. The fisherman had become entangled in his line amid a dense thicket of ancient stalactites and stalagmites in one of the cave's innermost chambers. She could hear his panicked breathing over the communications link as his air supply dwindled critically low. Zosha increased her pace, pulling herself hand over hand along the guideline, her high-powered lamps cutting through the inky void. That's when she saw a massive creature drifting through the shadows ahead. It was quickly 15 feet long and decidedly not the docile reef sharks occasionally spotted within the area. The unmistakable silhouette, elongated snout, and distinct dorsal fin told her it was an adult great white shark. White sharks were scarce in these waters, and Zosha's blood went cold when she realized this alpha predator may have taken up residence inside the cave system, with a trapped human providing the perfect lure. She signaled Handon to cease all movement and went breathlessly still, watching the great white's every twitch. The shark seemed to sense her presence, languidly approaching with methodical precision, its obsidian eyes piercing her. Zosha reached for her shark billy stick, a defensive weapon to drive off an attack if needed. A cloud of silt billowed up as something shifted behind the great white, briefly obscuring its position. Zosha's heart leaped into her throat when it cleared. Two more sharks had joined the first, swimming in tandem. She was surrounded by a pack of aggressive hunters closing in on her and their prey. Her safety training urged her to abandon the rescue attempt in the face of such extreme peril. But with Handon's fading life signs still registering, her determination kicked in. Shoving her fear aside, Zosha pushed forward towards the entangled fisherman. She had inches to spare as the trio of great whites began circling tighter, swimming figure eights around them. Their pointed snouts and rows of serrated teeth emerged from the gloom, almost close enough to graze her suit. Finally reaching Handon's position, Zosha rapidly untangled the fishing line from the stalagmites and secured him to her safety leash. His tank was nearly depleted from struggling in a futile panic. As the menacing shapes of the great whites drew closer, Zosha decided to activate the emergency heat marker. The searing flash momentarily disoriented the sharks, causing them to flinch and retreat, buying her a precious head start. Not wasting her narrow window of opportunity, Zosha kicked into high gear, using her powerful fins to propel herself and Handon back down the guideline towards the exit as swiftly as possible. The great whites gave furious pursuit, jaws gaping hungrily mere feet behind. She armed her shark billy and prepared for a confrontation. But as they approached the final bottleneck entrance to the caves, the sharks inexplicably broke off their attack, vanishing back into the blackness from which they came. Zosha didn't wait to discover their motivation, continuing and bursting through the surface into the open ocean. Gasping for air, she looked down at Handon, who was already beginning to regain consciousness. Though shaken to her core, Zosha had conquered one of the most extreme tests of her diving career through her bravery, skill, and unwavering commitment to the rescue ethos, trading one life for another no matter what monsters may lurk in the darkness. In 2013, the remote Isla del Coco, a national park located approximately 300 miles off the Pacific coast of Costa Rica, served as a protected marine sanctuary teeming with abundant sea life, including multiple species of sharks thriving in its temperate waters. The remote, uninhabited islands had been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site due to their incredible biodiversity and efforts to protect the endangered Galapagos, white-tip reef and whale sharks that congregated there. A group of American tourists had booked an eco-tour to snorkel and scuba dive amid the vibrant coral reefs surrounding Isla del Coco. Among them was Calvin Davenport, a high school science teacher passionate about marine biology. On the second day of their excursion, the tourists were enjoying the warm waters in a relatively shallow inlet, enthralled by the schools of colorful fish darting between the swaying kelp fronds. But their tranquility was shattered when a deckhand on the dive boat began frantically waving and shouting for them to return to the ship immediately. Jeffrey Takata, the seasoned park ranger accompanying the tour, felt his blood run cold when the reason for the alarm became clear: cloudy trails of blood roiling up from the reef below. In a blind panic, the snorkelers thrashed towards the ladder, hauling themselves over the gunnels, but one tourist was not so fortunate. As the boat's crew pulled the last straggler, Claire O'Malley, onto the dive platform, they gasped in horror. Where her right leg had been was nothing but a frothing stump of torn flesh and protruding bone. An abnormally large great white shark, well over 15 feet long, had ambushed the woman, shearing off her limb with a catastrophic chomp before disappearing into the depths, potentially to counterattack. Thanks to the quick efforts of Calvin, who happened to be an experienced EMT, Claire was stabilized long enough to evacuate via helicopter to a hospital on the mainland. However, she would remain in intensive care, having lost over half her blood from the traumatic amputation. Jeffrey and the Park Service closed off part of the waters around Isla del Coco, as the massive rogue shark remained unaccounted for, potentially still lurking in the vicinity. They brought in Socorro Castillo, a renowned ichthyologist, to try and unravel the mystery behind the great white's extremely uncharacteristic hunting behavior. Great whites were present in moderate numbers in the marine sanctuary, but they rarely ventured into the shallow reef areas to hunt, preferring to cruise the deeper ocean outskirts. And an attack of such sizable proportions on a human was virtually unheard of, especially without being provoked. As Socorro analyzed environmental data collected by the research staff, a potential pattern emerged. Detectable levels of toxic runoff from agriculture and manufacturing on the mainland had appeared in the currents, particularly in the area where the attack occurred. She theorized that pollution and human activity may have driven the shark into a confused frenzy, causing it to view the swimmers as prey, rather than avoiding them as typical great white behavior dictates. If her hypothesis was correct, the great white could strike again at any moment, putting any human activity in the waters at extreme risk. Socorro urged Jeffrey and the rangers to evacuate personnel from the sanctuary until the rogue shark could be located and neutralized. However, the park warden bristled at the idea of closing off the sanctuary and interrupting their vital conservation and research operations for a prolonged period. He contended they had enough security measures to mitigate the risk while safely conducting their work. The tension came to a head when the rogue great white savagely killed a park ranger conducting underwater surveys. Jolted by this latest fatality, Jeffrey authorized a full-scale hunt to eradicate the threat once and for all, looking to Socorro for guidance. She warned eliminating the great white would be daunting and futile if the core issues of contamination and human disturbance weren't addressed. But she realized Jeffrey's duty was protecting human life. Steeling themselves, the pair embarked on an unorthodox hunt, using every tactic to interact with the predator in its territory. After several close calls, they realized the only solution was capturing the great white alive and relocating it to an isolated sanctuary away from humans. Though immensely challenging, it was a chance to preserve the fragile balance between species and humble humanity's role in the undersea realm. With persistence and daring, they eventually succeeded, restoring safety to the marine paradise through their courageous actions. In the aftermath, strict environmental regulations were enacted to curtail toxic runoff near the marine sanctuary. Jeffrey and Socorro's harrowing ordeal also fostered greater awareness of the need to respect the natural habitats of apex predators like great whites. The sanctuary flourished as an ecological wonder, a powerful reminder of the importance of conservation and coexistence with nature's most awe-inspiring creatures. Isla Mackenzie stared across the endless blue of the Indian Ocean. Sea spray glittered in the South African sun as their boat, the Ocean Drifter, bobbed rhythmically. It was the 12th of July, 2001, a day etched into Isla's memory forever. A veteran diver with countless hours exploring the world below, she was on assignment with her longtime partner, Jonah Van Dyke. Jonah was a bear of a man, his tanned face a roadmap of a life lived outdoors, a stark contrast to Isla's lean frame and sun-kissed freckles. They were a mismatched pair, yet their shared love for the ocean made them an unstoppable team. Today was no ordinary dive. They were off the coast of Gansbai, known as the significant white shark capital of the world. These magnificent but fearsome creatures were as mysterious as they were dangerous. Isla had a healthy respect for these animals. Despite years of experience, the thrill of being close to such raw power was undeniable. The morning it started like any other. In her well-worn wetsuit, Isla and Jonah wrestled the heavy steel cage into the water. Their observation pod allowed safe, close-up encounters with the sharks. The crew, buzzing with nervous excitement, baited the water with fish parts and oils, creating a slick to attract their star. As Isla slipped into the cage, she felt a familiar pang of anticipation mixed with caution. She checked her oxygen tank and regulator, and the rhythm of her breaths was a soothing mantra in the silence of the descent. Below, the world transformed. Gone was the sun-dappled surface. Here, all was deep blue and calm tranquility. Already submerged and keeping watch, Jonah signaled to her from outside the cage. With a final deep breath, Isla closed the hatch and sank into the heart of the shark's domain. It was a waiting game now. Great whites were intelligent predators, patient and cunning. Years of study, they taught her about their acute senses of smell and sight. They could detect minute electrical currents emitted by living creatures. Jonah's missing leg was a constant reminder that nature played by its own rules down here. Isla loved her work but never forgot the inherent danger. Time, they seemed to both crawl and race underwater. Shadows flickered in the periphery of Isla's vision, but the great white remained elusive. Just as a numbing sense of routine began, a colossal shape materialized from the blue gloom. The shark was enormous, easily 5 meters long. Its skin was scarred, a testament to countless battles fought and won. It circled the cage slowly, its dark eyes seeming to fix on Isla with chilling intelligence. Something wasn't right. The shark's movements were erratic, unlike the calculated passes she was familiar with. And then it struck. With astonishing speed, the shark rammed the cage, the steel bars groaning and buckling under the impact. The force knocked Isla off her feet, sending her tumbling. Desperately, she grabbed a handhold as another blow shuttered the cage. The shark was in a frenzy, a mindless machine of teeth and muscle. Panic threatened to consume Isla. Yet beneath the terror, her diver training kicked in. She forced herself to breathe slowly to assess the situation. The cage, though dented, was holding. Her oxygen supply was intact. But for how long? The shark attacked again, this time targeting a corner of the cage. The bars bent with a screech, the gap between them widening alarmingly. Isla's heart pounded in her ears. The shark, sensing weakness, thrashed against the cage, its jaws wide open. Then, with a sickening twist, a bar snapped. Metal shrieked as another followed suit. Saltwater rushed in as the shark lunged, its massive head thrusting through the widening gap. Isla scrambled back, barely evading the snapping mass of teeth. This wasn't a curious nudge, this was an all-out attack. In a desperate move, she grabbed a spare tank, using it to wedge against the predator's snout. Simultaneously, she fumbled for the emergency release on the cage hatch. The shark thrashed, its rough scales scraping against her skin, its eye rolling wildly. With a final desperate shove, Isla propelled herself out of the broken cage. The shark swiveled, a blur of white and gray, narrowly missing her outstretched legs. She kicked frantically towards the surface, and the image of the shark's open maw burned into her mind. When her lungs screamed for air, Isla gasped frantically through the waves. Strong hands hauled her roughly onto the boat deck. It was Jonah, his face a mask of strained fear. She could barely speak, only pointing feebly back towards the water. The crew acted quickly, winching the damaged cage out of the depths. It emerged twisted and shattered, a testament to the raw power of the ocean's apex predator. But the shark vanished back into the blue where it belonged. Isla sat trembling, her wetsuit ripped and bloodied. The aftermath was a blur of questions, medical checks, and concerned faces. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, Isla found herself alone on the deck, staring into the darkening water where her ordeal had unfolded. She had cheated death, but the experience had changed her. Once a familiar playground, the ocean now held a hint of menace. Images of the attack haunted her dreams. It would take time to heal, both physically and mentally. And though Isla would return to the sea she loved, she knew a sliver of innocence was lost forever in those steel-barred depths. Dr. Ann Martinez stood on the research vessel's deck as the sun set, coloring the sky in shades of pink and orange. She took in the salty breeze as it ruffled her hair, taking in the distant calls of seagulls in the air while staring at the expansive sea before her. Ann is a respected marine biologist known for her groundbreaking research on shark behavior. Located at a secluded research center near the shores of South Africa, she had committed her life to uncovering the secrets of the top predators in the ocean. The building was rough, situated on a rocky cliff with a view of the rough waves, a reminder of the tough but alluring marine environment. Ann's anticipation increased as she got ready for another day of fieldwork. It won't be long before she takes another dive into shark-infested territory to closely study their behavior. As she was getting ready, a crackling voice unexpectedly pierced through the radio static. A distress signal from a diver stuck on a distant reef miles away. Ann immediately jumped into action, mobilizing her team for a rescue operation. The reef was famous among divers for its winding paths and dangerous currents, in addition to its rich marine ecosystem that Ann had devoted her life to researching. Even though there were risks involved, Ann couldn't resist answering the call for help. Realizing that someone's life depended on her quick actions, she understood the need to act swiftly. While the research vessel sailed through the rough waters, Ann's heart raced in her chest. Scanning the horizon, she looked for any indication of the stranded diver in the vast ocean. At last, they arrived at the reef, a sharp formation of rocks and coral emerging from the deep like a stone fortress. Ann quickly put on her scuba and survival equipment, ready to dive into the unfamiliar depths. As Ann submerged into the cool water, she met with the eerie calm and view of the depths. Before her, the reef expanded with a mix of colorful fish swimming among the coral formations, creating a lively scene. However, Ann knew that amidst its calm and picturesque facade, the sea harbors lurking threats. While sailing through the cold waters, she felt her heart skip a beat upon spotting the huge figure, a 15-foot great white shark moving smoothly through the sea. Ann was in awe of the apex predator, yet she was keenly aware of its dangerous nature and sharp predatory instincts. Following that, she finally found the exhausted diver grasping onto the rocky ledge, fighting for his life. With a steady hand, Ann continued forward, her attention locked on the diver in distress. She gestured to him, indicating that he should stay calm while she approached, prepared to help in any possible way. However, as Ann approached, she looked over her shoulder and her heart sank when she noticed the shark approaching, its eyes locked on its target. With incredible swiftness, the shark quickly moved forward, opening its mouth wide as it aggressively lunged toward the diver. Ann felt her heart jump into her throat with horror, her mind quickly considering her options. Ann used all her strength and training to act immediately. Using a strong kick, she propelled herself toward the shark, and her movements were smooth and accurate. She aimed to hit the shark's weak snout, a place she believed could immobilize the creature with a powerful enough blow. Ann's foot quickly made contact with the shark's delicate snout. The predator was taken aback. Its movement interrupted as it swerved off course from its target. However, the shark was still determined not to let go of its food. Within moments, the shark swiftly returned, this time with increased speed and aggression. Ann realized the diver was still in danger from the shark's attacks too late. The shark's sharp teeth brutally pierced his leg, causing a disturbing crunch as they tore through flesh and bone. The water became murky with blood, swirling in red wisps as the screams of the diver resonated in the depths. From a place of desperation, the diver kicked the shark over and over with his remaining leg. The shark pulled back once more and swam in a different direction, leaving the diver's legs severely mangled and torn to shreds. Ann's heart pounded as she watched the harrowing scene unfold, a sense of urgency gripping her. Time was running out and disaster loomed. Summoning every ounce of courage, Ann darted towards the injured diver, her hands trembling as she reached for her emergency medical kit. With swift, precise movements, she retrieved a length of gauze and a tourniquet, working swiftly to stem the flow of blood from the gaping wound. However, while trying to rescue the diver, Ann was aware that they were still at risk. The smell of blood permeated the water, acting as a signal that would draw in additional sharks to their spot over time. Fueled by determination and the will to survive, Anne lifted the injured diver onto her back, his weight dragging her down as she battled against the strong current. Using all her strength, she tried to drag the injured diver towards the safety of the rocks. But their movement was slow due to the inability of the diver to move on his own. As they moved closer to the formation of jagged rocks, Anne's biggest fears came true. The water appeared to darken around them, with more shadowy figures emerging from the depths. The smell of blood filled the water, causing the sharks to act on their primal instincts and move toward their exposed target in a frenzy. Anne's heart raced in her chest while she struggled to keep the injured diver above water, her mind filled with a strong feeling of determination. She was aware that their sole chance relied on getting to the research ship's safety before it was too late. They were in a race against time to survive against nature's unforgiving forces. Using all her strength and determination, Anne pushed forward. Her muscles ached and burned in protest of the effort she was exerting. However, as they approached the rock's refuge, the sharks advanced towards them, swiftly cutting through the water with alarming quickness. Anne sensed their presence hiding just below the surface, a primal intuition signaling the imminent threat encircling them. With a surge of adrenaline, Anne kicked with all her might, her arms straining with the effort as she propelled them towards the outcrops. The world around her seemed to blur as she reached the safety of terra firma. Anne hauled the injured diver onto the jagged rocks and climbed beside him. She immediately sent a flare beacon to signal the ship of their location. It wasn't long before the vessel cut through the waters and imposed itself upon the two survivors. The crew immediately retrieved and brought them aboard the ship. But even as they clung to the safety of the research vessel, Anne knew that their ordeal was far from over. The injured diver lay pale and motionless on the deck, his life hanging in the balance as Anne worked frantically to stabilize his condition. As the boat sped toward the safety of the shore, Anne's mind raced with a mix of adrenaline and concern. The diver lay unconscious beside her, his face pale and strained from the ordeal. She quickly assessed his injuries, applying pressure to the wound on his leg to stem the flow of blood. The wounded diver was lying still and pale on the deck, his life at risk. As the boat hurried towards the safety of the shore, Anne's thoughts were filled with a combination of adrenaline and worry. Speedily, she evaluated his wounds and put pressure on the gash on his leg to stop the bleeding. The research vessel raced toward the nearest port as the crew radioed for help and requested an ambulance to stand by at the port to swiftly transport the diver to a medical facility. Finally, the distant silhouette of the dock came into view. Anne breathed a sigh of relief as the ship pulled alongside the dock, eager hands reaching out to assist with the wounded diver. As they transferred him onto a stretcher, Anne whispered a silent prayer. She was thankful to be alive, but she was more thankful to be of help to a person in distress amidst forces of nature that no man can control. The sun painted the north shore of Oahu in pink and gold as the surfers lined up on the beach. They were focused on the enormous waves. Mia Taylor was one of them, a professional surfer renowned for her fearless spirit and fierce competition. She was considered a firm favorite for the Pacific Surf Championship finals. As competitors paddled off, the crowd was buzzing with excitement. Each competitor was determined to show their skills on these infamous Hawaiian waves. Mia felt that familiar rush of excitement as she positioned her body, waiting for the perfect waves to ride. From the shore, her family and friends cheered for her. Their support was a constant strength. The crowd cheered as Mia caught the massive wave. She moved in perfect harmony with the waves, maintaining an ideal balance. A dark shadow appeared just as she was about to execute a crucial maneuver. The atmosphere changed from excitement to terror in an instant. The shark appeared without warning, its massive body cut through the water at a terrifying pace. Mia felt an intense pain in her left leg when the shark bit into it. She felt panic as she struggled with her head above the water. The spectators screamed, and the event safety team began racing toward her on jet skis. Mia's mind was racing with fear and shock as she was hurried to the shore on a jet ski. On the beach, medical personnel immediately administered first aid. She was taken to hospital immediately after the attack, which left a deep cut on her leg. The incident sent shockwaves throughout the surfing community. The attack was broadcast by news outlets worldwide, casting a shadow on the championship. It also sparked a heated discussion about the safety and security of surf competitions. The fact that the shark attack occurred at a high-profile surf competition, despite all safety measures being in place, was a cause for concern. A cascade of emotions replaced Mia's initial shock as she lay in bed. Physical pain was severe, but mental and emotional suffering was even worse. She replayed over and over the moment of attack, the fear and pain and what-ifs. She was still concerned about the safety of her fellow surfers, and she continued to love the sport. Mia was determined to ensure no surfer had to endure such a traumatizing experience. She began to speak up. She gave interviews from her hospital bed, urging a thorough review of safety protocol at surfing events. Her story, amplified because of her surfing status, attracted significant attention. Mia argued for improved emergency medical services at all surfing competitions and increased competition water surveillance, including using drones and spotters to detect sharks. Her firm, clear voice resonated with many and turned her tragedy into an effective campaign for change. As she began her recovery journey, Mia's campaign gained momentum. Surfers, safety advocates, and fans worldwide echoed her call for change. Her ordeal highlighted a crucial gap in safety measures for the sport. And thanks to her bravery and determination, steps are being taken to close that gap. Mia Taylor's call for better safety standards in surfing events quickly grew into a more significant movement. As Mia recovered, her hospital bed became a hub for strategy sessions with experts in safety, meetings with organizers of events, and media interviews. Mia's commitment to safer surf competitions grew with each public discussion and appearance. Her advocacy led her to establish the Mia Taylor Safety Initiative. This nonprofit organization is dedicated to improving surfing and other water sports safety protocols. The initiative worked with shark behavior and marine biologists to develop better risk management strategies. They advocated using shark deterrent technologies, such as electromagnetic or acoustic devices, that could be integrated into surf competitions without harming marine wildlife. The response of the surfing community has been overwhelmingly positive. Many prominent surfers who once thought they were invincible regarding the unpredictable ocean now supported Mia. They also shared their stories of close calls and other concerns, often kept secret for fear that they would cause panic or damage the sport's image. Mia's efforts also resonated with surfers' families and the wider public. Her initiative led to the creation of rapid response teams and highly trained medical and rescue personnel who can handle emergencies at sea. The teams trained local surfers in popular destinations and were stationed during significant competitions. Pacific Surf Championship was the first event to adopt these new standards. Mia had been attacked during this event. The competition the following year included new safety features, including drone surveillance, medical teams on site with trauma expertise, and multiple safety vessels equipped with shark deterrent systems. Mia felt pride and nostalgia as she watched the game from the sidelines. Her leg had fully recovered, but her perspective was forever altered. She saw the ocean as it always was, but now with her marks. The surfers were confident, not only because of their skills and adrenaline, but also because they knew their safety would be taken seriously. Mia's advocacy had a far more significant impact than changing how the showing competitions are run. It started a global discussion about the relationship between people and wildlife. Understanding and respecting the natural habitats in which sport and recreation occur was highlighted. Mia's mission and story inspired schools and educational programs to include ocean safety and conservation issues. Mia's memoir, Beyond the Break, chronicled her transformation from a competitive surfer to a safety activist. It was a bestseller and inspired surfers and anyone facing adversity. Mia traveled the world to speak at conferences and workshops. She was committed to promoting resilience and safety in the face of nature's challenges. Mia Taylor turned a personal tragedy into a legacy that embodied safety and empowerment. Her work and name lived on through the policies she helped shape and in the hearts and minds of those she inspired. As the sun colored the sky with shades of pink and orange, creating a peaceful light over the calm waters, Sarah Liddell, Emily Sanders, Rachel DuBois, and Lisa Smith set off on a deep-sea fishing adventure from the coastal town of Hermanus, South Africa. They were excited to escape the busy city life and find excitement and friendship on the sea. Their boat smoothly cut through the peaceful sea, creating a foamy trail behind it. Seagulls flew above in circles, their sad calls mixing with the steady buzz of the engine. With the vast ocean before them, the women's laughter echoed through the air, filling it with excitement and anticipation. As they ventured further from the shore, the scent of salt mixed with the pungent odor of seaweed filled their nostrils with the unique fragrance of the sea. Sarah confidently steered the vessel through shifting currents, skillfully controlling the helm with steady hands. The women stood by the railing, gazing up at the morning sun to feel its warmth on their faces. Their animated voices were filled with excitement as they shared tales of past adventures and talked about future escapades. As time went by, the worries of the world disappeared, and in their place came a feeling of liberation and excitement. As they proceeded further into the sea, they were filled with a feeling of wonder, gazing out at the never-ending expanse of blue beneath them, where each wave was a captivating display of light and darkness. The ocean's immense size made them feel minuscule and unimportant. However, their peaceful daydream was suddenly interrupted by a sudden strong jerk that caused waves of shock to travel through the boat, knocking them off balance. Sarah tightly gripped the wheel as the boat tilted and swayed, the abrupt commotion disturbing the peacefulness of the scene. A massive shadow emerged beneath the water, a 17-foot great white shark, its smooth outline slicing through the water like a predator searching for prey. With a loud splash, the creature emerged from the water, its massive body creating a frightening shadow beneath the boat. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat at the sight of the shark's shiny teeth reflecting the sunlight. Emily felt a chill in her blood as she witnessed a horrifying sight, finding it difficult to grasp the severity of the danger in front of them. The women rushed for safety, their screams muffled by the overpowering sound of the roaring sea. Rachel's trembling hands scrambled for the emergency supplies, struggling with the latch of the storage compartment in a frantic attempt to prepare for the impending danger. While the shark swam menacingly around, focusing its dark eyes on its target, every moment felt frozen, with each heartbeat resonating like a warning of imminent danger. All their instincts told them to escape, but they were stuck, floating in a vast, merciless ocean with no place to escape or hide. At the same time, Lisa remained motionless in stunned silence, her eyes open wide in disbelief while the shark swam around the damaged boat, its gaze locked on its target. Sarah's urgent and commanding tone pierced through the chaos, inspiring her friends to take action. The shark made a sudden attack, easily ripping through the metal hull with its massive jaws. Emily let out a scream when she noticed the boat shaking under her, the noise of the metal tearing reverberating in her ears. Feeling desperate and overwhelmed, the women understood they needed to act quickly. Rachel and Emily hurriedly prepared the inflatable raft as the ship neared sinking, their hands trembling with panic as they secured the sections. While fighting against the relentless attack of the shark, time appeared to come to a standstill. Each noise was amplified, the groan of stressed metal, the crash of frothy waves on the ship, the labored wheezes of their breath as they struggled to survive. Once the raft was put together, the women held onto it tightly, resembling shipwrecked survivors lost at sea in a turbulent storm. The shark moved around them in a manner reminiscent of a vulture, its gaze shining with hunger as it waited for the ideal opportunity to attack. Sarah, her hands shaking, turned on the electronic shark repellent. Sarah clung to the hope that the shark repellent would work as she attached it to the bottom of the inflatable raft. The team observed with anticipation as the shark swam around the raft. As it closed in on the group, they were aware that an attack was imminent. The group looked at one another. If the repellent failed, they understood they would be fish food. After a few minutes of circling the inflatable raft, the shark began to approach. However, as it neared, it suddenly recoiled as though it had bumped into an invisible blockade. It quickly pulled back and began going around the raft once more. After that, it began to advance for a second assault, but hesitated again as though it had collided with the barrier once more. The group was relieved to find out that the repellent was effective. Hours drifted by in a haze of uncertainty and doubt. The sun rose higher in the sky, creating lengthy shadows over the turbulent waves. Tired and freezing, the women gathered closely, using each other's body warmth. Everyone felt sore from the strain of survival. As night fell over the sea like a cloak, a ray of hope emerged in the distance, a tiny spot of light getting bigger as time went by. It was a ship. As they realized that help was near, relief flooded through them like a wave. Right away, Sarah fired a flare that lit up the night sky, alerting the boat for assistance. The rescue boat approached closer, its searchlights piercing the darkness like signals of hope. The women's desperate and grateful voices joined together in a chorus, their cries engulfed by the immensity of the ocean. It wasn't long before the women were being hauled aboard the rescue ship. Shaking hands, they extended their arms to hold on to their rescuers' outstretched arms, bringing their ordeal to a close. Upon returning to solid ground, they held on to one another tightly, resembling shipwreck survivors, with their faces showing signs of fear and trauma from the experience. Looking out at the endless sea, they felt a feeling of gratitude and relief. They went out to sea to unwind from the city's hustle and bustle, but they emerged stronger as individuals and with a friendship strengthened by the ocean. Dr. Thomas Reed, an experienced marine biologist, stood on the rugged shores of Sable Island, with his gaze fixed toward the North Atlantic. The island, known for its wild horses and harsh terrains, was also the focal point of shark research because it was close to deep ocean currents, where many shark species were found. Thomas spent the last 10 years of his professional career studying these magnificent predators and advocating for their conservation. Thomas and his team set out on a bright morning in early summer, full of excitement and tagging equipment. The goal was to tag and track great white sharks to gather data on their migration patterns. Thomas and his team reviewed the tagging protocol as the boat cut through cold waters. The ocean was alive as they approached the designated area for tagging. Seabirds flew overhead, and shadowy sharks moved under the waves. Thomas felt the familiar thrill of what he did every day. The tagging spear was ready, and his hands were steady despite the waves. They encountered a giant female shark who glided through the water in a manner that belied its size. Thomas leaned over the side and aimed his tagging spear. It was a tense moment, a dance of man and beast who were both aware of each other. Thomas used a well-practiced motion to deploy the tag. It was a perfect fit and attached itself to the shark's fin. The shark, however, reacted violently. Its mighty tail whipped as it accelerated towards Thomas. The situation escalated in a flash. Thomas was thrown into the freezing water when the shark crashed into the side. The team was thrown into an activity frenzy to rescue Thomas. Thrusting and disoriented, Thomas felt his heart clench with fear when he saw the massive silhouette of the shark circle towards him. He had been trained as a scientist to follow protocols in such situations, but nothing prepared him for the fear he felt when he saw a great white shark in its natural habitat. The shark didn't attack again. Thomas's team managed to get him back on board despite his shaking body from shock and cold. Thomas's thoughts raced as they returned to the shore. The shark did not bite Thomas, but his encounter with it had left an indelible mark on him. Thomas struggled with his emotions on Sable Island. The incident shattered Thomas's confidence, which planted doubts about his chosen career. Sharks were always misunderstood. He believed they should be studied and protected. Now, facing the real dangers that these powerful creatures pose, he began to question his resolve. Thomas sat on the beach under the moonlight and watched the waves crash. Once a place of fascination and endless wonder, the ocean now appeared as a vast, menacing unknown. He was committed to shark conservation, but the fear of returning to the sea gnawed him. Thomas pondered the dilemma and realized his journey had reached a crossroads. Could he still advocate for these animals despite his fears? Had the incident irrevocably altered his relationship with the sea and its creatures? His internal conflict became palpable as he weighed his commitment against his fears. It was not only about whether he would return to the water, but also about how to continue contributing to a cause that he believed in while managing his trauma. It was a question of courage and conviction in the face of deep fear. Thomas Reed spent the days that followed his incident introspecting. Thomas Reed found himself in the Sable Island Research Station, surrounded by colleagues but isolated. Thomas always found an excuse to avoid joining the day's tagging excursion. He knew that he was trying to avoid the inevitable return to water. Thomas's excitement was replaced by a fearful feeling at the mere thought of it. Thomas spent the day poring over data from already deployed tags. Thomas tried to get lost in the graphs and patterns of migration, but his mind kept drifting back to that encounter. He was haunted by the image of the shark's dark, unyielding gaze, which reminded him of his vulnerability before nature's raw force. His avoidance was not unnoticed. His longtime friend and colleague, Dr. Emily Saunders, approached him one evening. They sat on the beach together as the sun sank below the horizon. She gently urged him to open up, noticing that he hadn't been swimming since that day, and asked if the research was bothering him. Thomas's fears were unspoken. He knew what to do and thought he should return to work, recognizing that his fear was not a mere shadow. It was palpable and real. He wondered how he could protect these creatures if he were terrified of them. Emily listened with understanding and acknowledged that fear is a compelling emotion. She emphasized that his commitment was just as important, noting that it was not about conquering fear, but finding a way for him to continue working despite the fear. Emily reassured him that there were many ways to contribute to conservation. Her words touched a nerve with him. Thomas stayed awake that night, thinking about how to change his perspective. He started thinking about other ways to impact shark conservation without going into the field. He found that education, policy advocacy, and remote data analyses were viable options to keep him involved in his mission. Thomas was motivated by his new perspective to develop educational programs that inform the public about shark behavior and conservation. He also developed policy proposals to promote safer research, and participated in remote monitoring projects that used satellite and drone technology to track shark movements. After a few months, Thomas's new niche was fulfilling. He became a popular speaker at schools and conferences, where he shared his story about the importance of protecting and respecting marine life. He had learned to cope with his fear and turned it into an inspiration for education and advocacy. Thomas eventually returned to the boat as an advisor rather than a dive master. He felt pride and accomplishment as he watched the new team continue to tag. He did not let his fear stop him from being dedicated. It deepened his respect and understanding for the creatures he had always admired. Thomas Reed's encounter with the shark was a life-changing experience that strengthened his resolve in unexpected and surprising ways. His journey taught him an important lesson. True courage is not the absence or lack of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. Thomas's story was widely shared, reminding those in the conservation field that conservation is fraught, but also offers opportunities for growth and adaptation. In 2012, 5 friends embarked on an adventurous camping trip to the secluded coast of El Nido, Palawan, Philippines. The pristine beaches, fringed by towering limestone cliffs and lush tropical foliage, promised a serene escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. Leading the charge was Liam Mercado, an outdoor enthusiast who thirsted for exploration. His friends, Samantha Villanueva, Jericho Reyes, Miguel Santos, and Isabel Alvarez, shared his passion for adventure and were eager to trade the concrete jungle for a few days of untamed beauty. As their pickup truck rumbled along the winding coastal road, the group couldn't help but marvel at the breathtaking scenery that unfolded before them. The azure waters of the West Philippine Sea sparkled invitingly, while the white sandy beaches seemed to beckon them towards a tranquil paradise. After a 2-hour drive, they finally reached their destination, a remote cove tucked away from the well-trodden tourist spots. Liam had stumbled upon this hidden gem during a previous hiking expedition, and couldn't wait to share its beauty with his friends. They quickly set up their tents, assembling a cozy base camp amidst the swaying palm trees. The waves gently lapping against the shore provided a soothing backdrop to their laughter and banter as they unpacked their supplies. The first day was spent lounging on the beach, soaking up the warm tropical sun, and swimming in the crystal-clear waters. Jericho, a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, even managed to convince the group to try their hand at cliff jumping from the nearby limestone formations. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Samantha noticed something peculiar. She signaled the rest to confirm if they had seen something, her brow furrowed in concern. The others turned to follow her gaze, scanning the water's surface. That's when they spotted a dark triangular fin slicing through the waves, unmistakably belonging to a shark. Liam waved it off, his voice reassuring. Liam was not worried, as the thought of it probably being just a reef shark came in. He exclaimed that they were harmless and quite common in those waters. The group accepted his explanation, but Samantha couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in the pit of her stomach. As night fell, they gathered around the crackling campfire, roasting marshmallows and swapping stories, the earlier sighting of the shark temporarily forgotten. A natural storyteller, Miguel regaled them with tales of his previous camping adventures, his animated gestures casting flickering shadows across their faces. It wasn't until the following morning that the true gravity of their situation became apparent. Isabel had woken early, drawn to the tranquil waters by the promise of a refreshing morning swim. As she waded into the shallows, her eyes widened in shock at the sight before her. Dozens of sharks, their sleek bodies gliding effortlessly through the turquoise waters, patrolled the shoreline. Panic gripped her and she hurried back to the safety of the beach, her heart pounding in her chest. She cried, signaling them to wake up, her voice tinged with fear. There were sharks everywhere. The others sprang into action, their eyes widening as they took in the unsettling scene. The once peaceful cove had transformed into a veritable feeding ground, teeming with the unmistakable silhouettes of hungry sharks. Liam's face paled as he recognized the distinctive shape of the predators, blacktip reef sharks, known for their aggressive nature and territorial behavior. He muttered that it wasn't good, his mind racing to formulate a plan. They needed to return to the truck and leave there immediately. The group quickly packed up their belongings, their movements hurried and tense. Ever the daredevil, Jericho couldn't resist one last dip in the water, much to the others' dismay. As he waded out into the shallows, the sharks seemed to take notice, their sleek bodies drawing closer to the thrashing figure. Samantha watched in horror as one particularly bold specimen surged towards Jericho, its mighty jaws snapping shut mere inches from his leg. She screamed to Jericho, her voice shrill with terror. Thankfully, Jericho heeded her warning, scrambling back towards the safety of the beach, his face pale and his body trembling from the close call. With their supplies hastily packed and their nerves frayed, the group set off towards the narrow path that led back to their vehicle. Their footsteps hurried, and their eyes scanning the water's edge for any sign of the prowling sharks. The path wound along the coastline, hugging the rocky cliffs and offering little protection from the encroaching tide. As they rounded a particularly treacherous bend, Miguel's foot caught on a loose rock, sending him tumbling towards the water's edge. A black-tip shark materialized from the depths in a heartbeat, its mighty jaws clamping down on Miguel's outstretched leg. The sickening crunch of bone echoed across the cove as the shark thrashed violently, dragging the screaming Miguel deeper into the water. The others watched in horror, frozen in place by the gruesome scene unfolding before them. Liam finally sprang into action, grabbing a nearby branch and charging towards the shark, his face contorted with rage and determination. The shark, momentarily startled by the commotion, released its grip on Miguel's mangled leg, allowing Liam and Jericho to drag their injured friend back to safety. Isabel and Samantha quickly fashioned a makeshift tourniquet, their hands trembling as they worked to stem the blood flow. Miguel's face was ashen, his eyes glazed with pain and shock. They had to get out of with their voices barely above a whisper. The group pressed on, their pace slowed by Miguel's injury but fueled by a renewed sense of urgency. The path seemed to stretch endlessly before them, each twist and turn revealing more treacherous terrain, and the ever-present threat of the sharks lurking in the shallows. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they caught sight of their pickup truck, miraculously untouched amidst the chaos. With renewed determination, they hurried towards the vehicle, their shoes slapping against the sand as they ran. Liam fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking as he unlocked the doors and ushered the others inside. Miguel's ragged breathing filled the cabin as Samantha and Isabel tended to his wounds, their faces etched with worry. As the truck roared to life, Liam gunned the engine, the tires kicking up a plume of sand as they hurtled down the narrow path toward the main road. Sensing the commotion, the sharks surged towards the retreating vehicle, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with terrifying speed. Jericho watched in horror as one particularly tenacious black-tip shark leaped from the water, its mighty jaws snapping shut mere inches from the rear window. Liam's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel, his foot flooring the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, careening around sharp bends and leaving the sharks in their wake. It wasn't until they reached the main coastal road that the group breathed a sigh of relief. Miguel's condition, however, remained critical, and they knew they needed to get him to a hospital as soon as possible. In the weeks and months that followed, the scars of their encounter would heal, but the memories would linger forever. Miguel, his leg permanently disfigured by the shark's vicious attack, found solace in the unwavering support of his friends. Later, the group remained inseparable, their bond forged in the crucible of their shared experience. They became advocates for responsible ecotourism, sharing their cautionary tales with others and promoting a greater understanding of the delicate balance between humans and the natural world. As the sun lay below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and red, the group looked back on their harrowing ordeal with a newfound respect for nature's power and unpredictability. What had begun as a peaceful camping trip had quickly descended into a nightmarish struggle for survival against the very creatures they had come to admire. The stunning Table Mountain in Cape Town was illuminated by the morning sun, casting a magical view over the busy city. Situated on the rugged coast of South Africa, Cape Town was a city that juxtaposed towering skyscrapers with the wild beauty of nature. Michaela Taylor, a young surfer whose essence reflected the wild ocean, discovered a feeling of belonging in the vibrant streets and lively shores of her urban environment. She saw Cape Town as more than simply a city. It represented a certain way of life, a location where she could fully embrace the ocean's rhythm. While on her way to her usual spot for surfing, Michaela was amazed by the beautiful scenery around her. She gazed at the expanse of the Atlantic Ocean's blue waters ahead of her, reflecting the morning sun while seagulls echoed in the distant salty air. Arriving at the secluded cove where she enjoyed surfing, Michaela experienced a surge of excitement. The waves in this location were known for their strong power and determined nature, and Michaela enjoyed the challenge they presented. With her trusty surfboard by her side, Michaela headed out into the pristine waters, experiencing the refreshing touch of the sea surrounding her. With eager eyes, she scanned the horizon in search of the ideal wave to ride, her heart filled with anticipation and pounding. However, as Michaela surfed on top of a huge wave towards the beach, her feeling of complete happiness was ruined by a sudden motion below her. A chilling fear ran down Michaela's back as a sinister shadow lurked below the water's surface. Before she could react, the bull shark swiftly surged upwards, its large mouth snapping just inches from her dangling feet. Michaela felt her heart racing with frantic energy as she paddled away quickly, sensing the surge of adrenaline in her bloodstream. Bull sharks were well known for their aggressive behavior, often seen swimming in the waters of Cape Town, hunting for food. They are top predators, able to cause significant harm with just one bite due to their strong jaws and sharp teeth. While attempting to evade the relentless predator, Michaela felt a sudden pain in her leg when the shark's teeth broke through her skin. She screamed in pain and flailed wildly, trying to escape its grasp. The shark's teeth ripped her wetsuit apart easily, causing deep wounds on her leg that bled into the water in crimson trails. Michaela struggled to remain alert as her vision became hazy with pain, her thoughts overwhelmed by the suddenness of the assault. Michaela gathered up all her energy to grab her surfboard, struggling with the built-in electronic shark repellent device as she did so. She quickly activated a switch, sending a strong electric pulse that shocked the shark's sensitive receptors, making it let go of her leg. Struggling to breathe, Michaela kicked fiercely towards the top, her wounded leg leaving a trail of blood in the water. However, the shark was not willing to surrender without a fight. Driven by an innate instinct, it circled to launch another assault, never losing sight of its injured victim. Michaela resisted with all her remaining energy, using her surfboard as a makeshift shield against the unending attack. Repeatedly, the shark attacked her, its mouth closing just inches away from her. As time went by, Michaela's injuries worsened, causing a searing pain to spread through her body. The salt water entering her wounds caused increasing pain. The sharp teeth of the shark caused deep puncture injuries in her leg, cutting through muscle and sinew. Blood mixed with ocean water, forming a red cloud that surrounded the surfer's battered form. Michaela's cries resonated through the water, a chilling mixture of agony and terror that traveled through the vast emptiness of the ocean. The woman sensed the shark's warm breath on her body, its innate craving pushing it nearer to its injured target. However, Michaela persisted in not giving in to the darkness that loomed over her, determined not to be consumed by it. Focused on staying alive, she used all her remaining strength to keep the shark away, feeling her muscles burn with fatigue. Michaela's strength was gradually waning. Placing all her faith in the shark repellent, she activated the device again, aiming to scare off the aggressive shark. Just as the shark was about to strike once more, it abruptly changed course and swam away. Perplexed, Michaela took advantage of the situation by getting on her board and beginning to paddle towards the shore. With a new resolve, she delved into her innermost being, tapping into the final bit of energy she possessed. Using all her strength, Michaela paddled vigorously, feeling the burning sensation in her arms as she pushed herself towards safety. She felt relief and triumph as the shore neared steadily with every passing moment. Finally, after a long time, Michaela felt the comforting feeling of sand under her feet as she made her way onto the safety of the beach. Sinking onto the gentle sand, she let out a sigh of relief, her body shaking from a mix of fatigue and excitement. While lying down and gazing at the expansive sky overhead, Michaela couldn't shake a deep feeling of thanks. She confronted her biggest fear and came out on top, demonstrating to both herself and others that her strength surpassed even her expectations. Immediately, a group of beachgoers noticed Michaela lying bloodied on the sand. With a mixture of panic and urgency, the group called for help. In just a matter of minutes, Michaela was being loaded into an ambulance that would take her to the hospital. After a few weeks, Michaela was released from the hospital. Her leg bore the scars of the gruesome encounter with the shark. But despite the injuries, she was thankful for the second chance at life. It was the cool summer of 2014 when a team of experienced divers set their sights on the remote Palau Trench, a deep-sea trench located off the coast of the tiny Pacific island nation of Palau. For years, rumors had swirled about a sunken treasure ship, its hold brimming with priceless artifacts from a bygone era, lost to this mysterious underwater chasm. Calista Mendoza, a seasoned treasure hunter with a reputation for fearlessness and an insatiable thirst for adventure, led the expedition. Her crew consisted of Alejandro Torres, a former naval officer with extensive diving experience, and the siblings Marissa and Javier Ramirez, both skilled technical divers with a passion for underwater exploration. As their research vessel, the Azul Profundo, cut through the vast waters of the Pacific, excitement crackled in the air like static electricity. Calista pored over the faded charts and ancient texts that had guided them to this remote location, her eyes alight with the promise of uncovering a long-lost treasure. She declared that that was it, her voice tinged with a reverence bordering on obsession. It was the resting place of the Dorada del Mar, a Spanish galleon laden with gold and artifacts beyond our wildest dreams. Alejandro, ever the pragmatist, arched an eyebrow skeptically. He confirmed if Caliste was certain the coordinates were accurate because they were venturing into uncharted territory there. Calista shot him a withering glance, asking if she had ever steered them wrong. She let the question hang in the air, her conviction unwavering. The crew made final preparations as the Azul Profundo neared the designated coordinates. Scuba tanks were checked, rebreathers were calibrated, and diving slates were handed out, each bearing an intricate map to guide them to their underwater destination. With a collective intake of breath, the divers submerged into the inky depths, their powerful dive lights cutting through the perpetual gloom that enveloped the trench. The descent was slow and methodical, each diver monitoring their air consumption and depth with practiced precision. A sense of awe washed over them as they neared the bottom of the trench. The seabed was littered with the remnants of shipwrecks, their once proud hulls reduced to ghostly skeletons by the relentless passage of time. Ancient amphorae and weathered artifacts peeked through the silt, tantalizing glimpses of the treasures that might lay in wait. Calista signaled for the team to regroup, her eyes shining with excitement. Using her slate, she traced the path they would need to follow, the map leading them deeper into the heart of the trench. The journey was arduous, with the divers navigating treacherous terrain and through labyrinthine coral and rock formations. But their perseverance was rewarded when Javier's light illuminated a sight that caused their hearts to skip a beat. Half buried in the silt lay the unmistakable outline of a ship's hull, its timbers warped and encrusted with centuries of marine growth. Callista's eyes widened as she took in the intricate carvings that adorned the stern, a telltale sign that they had indeed stumbled upon the legendary Dorada del Mar. Adrenaline coursing through their veins, the team set about carefully excavating the site, their movements precise and respectful as they uncovered the ship's secrets. Javier and Marissa worked in tandem, brushing away layers of silt to reveal the glint of gold and the shimmer of precious gemstones. Alejandro, his military training kicking in, kept a watchful eye on their surroundings, his gaze constantly sweeping the inky depths for any potential threats. It was this vigilance that alerted him to the first sign of danger. Then a massive shadow, darker than the surrounding gloom, emerged from the murky depths, its curved form cutting through the water with lethal grace. Alejandro's blood ran cold as he recognized the unmistakable silhouette of a great white shark, its fearsome jaws agape and its beady eyes fixed on the diving team. Alejandro alerted the others with a frantic series of hand signals to the impending threat. Callista, her face set in grim determination, signaled for them to continue their excavation, unwilling to abandon their hard-won prize. The shark circled closer, its powerful tail propelling it through the water with terrifying speed. Marissa watched in horror as the predator's jaws snapped shut mere inches from her face, the rush of displaced water sending her tumbling backward. Javier, his protective instincts kicking in, positioned himself between his sister and the shark. His eyes narrowed in defiance. But even his bravery paled in the face of the ocean's apex predator, its primordial hunger driving it closer to the team. As the minutes ticked by, tension mounted, each diver acutely aware of their dwindling air supply and the looming threat of the great white. Callista's face was a mask of concentration as she carefully extracted an ornate golden chalice from the wreckage, her movements slow and deliberate. But the shark's predatory senses, heightened by the scent of blood from a minor cut on Marissa's hand, seemed to grow more agitated with each passing second. Its circling tightened, its powerful tail thrashing the water into a furious maelstrom. Alejandro knew they were running out of time. With a series of urgent hand signals, he conveyed the gravity of the situation to Callista. Her face twisted in anguish, torn between the lure of the treasure and the preservation of her crew's safety. In the end, self-preservation won out. With a heavy heart, Callista signaled for the team to begin their ascent, clutching the golden chalice to her chest as they kicked towards the surface, their movements fueled by desperation. The great white, sensing its prey slipping away, surged forward with terrifying speed, its jaws snapping shut mere inches from Javier's fin. The young diver propelled himself upwards with a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, his heart pounding in his ears. The ascent felt like an eternity, each diver painfully aware of their rapidly depleting air supply and the relentless pursuit of the shark. Marissa's eyes widened in horror as the predator closed in on her brother, its jaws agape and its powerful body coiled to strike. Alejandro interposed himself between the shark and Javier in a moment of selfless bravery, brandishing a titanium dive knife in a desperate bid to fend off the attack. The undeterred shark surged forward, its massive bulk slamming into Alejandro with the force of a freight train. The impact sent the former naval officer tumbling through the water, his air supply momentarily cut off as the shark's thrashing tail clipped his regulator. For a few agonizing seconds, he flailed helplessly, his lungs burning for oxygen. Javier, acting on pure instinct, grabbed Alejandro's arm and hauled him towards the surface, his powerful kicks propelling them both upwards with renewed urgency. Marissa and Callista followed close behind, their faces etched with fear and determination. Finally, after an eternity, they breached the surface, their gasping breaths filling the air with a symphony of relief. The great white denied its prey circled menacingly beneath them, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a razor's edge. As the Azul Profundo's crew hauled them on board, the divers collapsed onto the deck, their bodies trembling with the lingering adrenaline rush of their harrowing encounter. Alejandro, his face pale and his eyes haunted, clutched the titanium dive knife that had saved his life, its blade bent and scarred from the shark's powerful jaws. Later on, the team found themselves grappling with the aftermath of their brush with death. As for the legendary Dorada del Mar, its secrets would remain largely undisturbed, save for the ornate golden chalice that now resided in a museum, a silent testament to the perils and wonders that awaited those daring enough to venture into the depths unknown. The underwater treasure hunt had been a harsh reminder of the fragility of life and the unforgiving nature of the ocean's depths. For the divers, it had been a baptism by fire, a crucible that had forged them into wiser, more cautious explorers of the underwater realm. As they looked back on that fateful expedition, they couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude, not for the treasure they had recovered, but for the ultimate prize, their lives, snatched from the jaws of death by sheer force of will, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and camaraderie. Sarah Jennings sat on the deck of a dive boat with her eyes fixed on the glistening Great Barrier Reef. The shimmering reflections of the sun on the water starkly contrasted with the turmoil within her. 3 years had passed since a shark bite during routine diving had almost cost her a limb and stolen her peace. After countless operations and more therapy sessions, she was now here to reclaim the part of her that the ocean had taken. Sarah, a 26-year-old marine biologist, had always sought solace in the depths. The attack happened on a bright, promising day. The pain, blood, and fear were vivid in her memory. Her world was shattered, and she had to rebuild it painfully, one step at a time. Under her wetsuit were the physical scars, but they were just as visible as before. She did not make this decision lightly. Her therapist encouraged Sarah, and her dive team supported her in facing her fears. She was aware of the statistics that shark attacks are rare. But the fear wasn't about statistics. It was personal and traumatic. She was about to face it. Sarah's heart was racing as the boat approached the dive site. Through the mask, she could hear herself breathing, a mixture of dread and determination filling her. Mike, the dive master, gave her a nod of encouragement. He reassured her that she could take her time, indicating she should be ready only when she felt ready, his voice steady and comforting. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped up to the edge. The deep blue waters held her deepest fears and passions. After one last look at her supportive friends, she let herself go into the ocean. Water enveloped her in a coolness she had known and found comforting. The sounds of the world above her faded as she sank, replaced by the rhythmic sound from her breathing and the gentle hum from the sea. Coral reefs were vibrant and alive. Fish darted between them, their vibrant colors reminding her why she fell in love with them in the first place. Sarah felt her anxiety lift with each meter of descent. Her dive partner, Mike's careful observation from above, and her concentration on the dive helped to push away the anxiety. She let herself be mesmerized by the graceful glide of a turtle, the swaying sea anemones, and the sleek, unthreatening form of a minor reef shark. The dive was more than a return to work. It was also a journey to find herself. The reef, a place of trauma and beauty, symbolized Sarah's resilience. Sarah knew that the dive wouldn't erase her trauma, but it was an essential step to living with it. It also testified to her courage and a bridge towards her recovery. Sarah's connection to the coral reef was more vital than ever as she gently touched a delicate coral. The underwater world that was once a source of terror now became a source of healing and wondered in Sarah's life. Her return was more than just a dive. It was also about finding a balance between her memories and reality. This dive was her statement that she wouldn't let fear define her relationship with the ocean. Sarah Jennings grew more empowered with each minute spent underwater. Her fears started to melt as the Great Barrier Reef surrounded her. The salt water mingled with her fear in a cathartic release. She watched as the school of parrotfish nibbled on the algae-covered reef, their movements calm and purposeful. Sarah discovered a metaphor in the ocean's depths for her life, a process of recovery and growth, even when faced with adversity. Sarah swam closer to the coral bommy as she progressed in her dive. This popular gathering place for marine life captivated her with its vibrant colors and bustling activity. Sarah felt her traumas begin to lift as she watched a tiny octopus ingeniously disguise itself among the rocks. She no longer just survived. She lived fully and totally in the present. She was now indifferent to the presence of a reef shark, which had previously filled her with fear. It moved with effortless grace. Its sleek body cut through the water with precision. Sarah watched from a distance, her heart calm and her mind clear. Like the shark that attacked Sarah, this shark was an underwater creature. not a monster out to destroy. Sarah's perception changed when she realized this. Sarah realized that the ocean was not something to be feared, but a dynamic ecosystem in which every creature, including her, had a part to play. Sarah told her friend that the dive was coming to an end. The two slowly ascended to the surface, stopping at intervals to decompress. Sarah inhaled deeply when her head broke the surface. The fresh air tasted sweeter than before. She removed her mask to see the vast ocean that surrounded her. Her fear of the sea, which had previously overshadowed her love for it, diminished. It was a distant memory compared to the vivid reality of her victory. Her team congratulated and praised her, their faces bright with relief and pride. Mike smiled broadly and clapped Sarah on the back, warmly welcoming her back, indicating they had missed her presence underwater. Sarah's return was more than a personal triumph. It reverberated in her community. Other divers who had suffered similar traumas reached out to Sarah. Sarah's story sparked an in-depth discussion about the psychological impacts of such encounters and the importance of facing one's fear. She began working with a local dive school to create a program to help divers overcome their fear of diving by combining psychological counseling with gradual exposure. The program gained rapid attention and attracted divers worldwide who wanted to rediscover their love of the ocean. Sarah's position as a diving mentor and mental health advocate was solidified. Her own experiences enhanced the advice she gave. She participated in conferences and discussions on shark conservation and spoke about the importance of understanding and respecting these misunderstood animals. Sarah reflected on her experience years later with gratitude and a sense of accomplishment. She had overcome her fears by returning to the coral reef, but she also started a movement encouraging resilience and healing. She had lost a lot, but the ocean gave her back much more than she ever imagined. She had a new relationship with the ocean, defined by respect, an understanding of the sea, and a firm belief in the human spirit's ability to adapt and overcome. Her legacy was woven into the fabric and endless waters of the ocean and the diving community. It was the summer of 2018 in the small coastal town of Donsol, Philippines. The quaint village was nestled between lush green hills and the shimmering azure waters of the Pacific Ocean. For generations, the locals had coexisted harmoniously with the diverse marine life in the area's rich ecosystem. However, a group of eco-tourists was about to experience a terrifying ordeal that would shatter the tranquil facade of this seaside paradise. Quintin Delgado, a renowned marine biologist, organized the tour to raise awareness about preserving the delicate balance of the local marine environment. Among the participants were Zarina Villanueva, a passionate environmentalist, and her husband, Javier Reyes, an amateur photographer eager to capture the wonders of the underwater world. The tour group boarded the Casiana, a sturdy yet weathered fishing vessel captained by the grizzled local Thomas Alvarez. His first mate, the young and energetic Maricel Santos, ensured all safety protocols were in place. The plan was to embark on a diving expedition to observe the magnificent whale sharks that frequented the waters off the coast of Donsol. As the Casiana set sail, the tourists' excited chatter filled the air. Quintin briefed them on the importance of maintaining a respectful distance from the gentle giants, emphasizing that their presence should not disrupt the sharks' natural behavior. With their diving gear in order and anticipation brewing, the group eagerly awaited their first encounter with the majestic creatures. After an hour, Tomas skillfully maneuvered the boat to a spot renowned for whale shark sightings. The crystal-clear waters offered excellent visibility, and the tourists eagerly donned their diving gear. One by one, they slipped beneath the surface, their eyes wide with wonder as they caught their first glimpses of the massive spotted sharks gliding gracefully through the azure expanse. For a while, the experience was nothing short of breathtaking. The whale sharks, seemingly unperturbed by the divers' presence, continued their serene dance through the vibrant coral gardens. Her heart swelling with joy, Zarina gestured excitedly to Javier, who eagerly snapped away with his camera, capturing the majestic creatures in their natural habitat. However, their blissful reverie was shattered when a sudden jarring noise reverberated through the water. The anchored Casiana had drifted dangerously close to a treacherous reef, and the anchor chain had become entangled in the sharp coral formations. Tomas and Maricel, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately signaled for the divers to resurface. As the group hastily ascended, a sense of unease settled over them. The commotion caused by the struggling vessel had attracted the attention of a different kind of shark, one far more menacing than the gentle whale sharks they had been observing. Quentin's experienced eye immediately recognized the telltale silhouettes of oceanic white-tip sharks, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with predatory grace. These apex predators, known for their aggressive nature, had likely been drawn to the area by the thrashing of the anchor chain and the disturbance it had caused. With the divers safely back on board, Tomas and Maricel worked feverishly to free the anchor, their efforts punctuated by the ominous circling of the white-tip sharks. The tourists huddled together, their hearts pounding as they watched the sharks increasingly agitated by the ongoing disturbance. Zarina clutched Javier's hand, her knuckles turning white with fear. She whispered to Javier, her voice trembling. Quentin, his brow furrowed with concern, addressed the group. He urged them to remain calm. These sharks were highly territorial and had been drawn to the area by the noise and movement. Their best course of action was to stay as still and quiet as possible until they could free the anchor and get the boat moving again. It was easier said than done as the sharks' circling grew tighter and more menacing with each passing minute. The tourists could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Tomas and Maricel redoubled their efforts, their muscles straining against the stubborn anchor chain. Finally, with a tremendous heave, the anchor broke free, and the Cassiana lurched forward, propelled by the powerful currents. Relief washed over the group as the white-tip sharks fell behind, their interest waning as the disturbance subsided. However, their respite was short-lived. The propeller churned the waters as the Cassiana gained speed, kicking up a heated trail of bubbles and vibrations. To the sharks, this new disturbance was an irresistible lure, and they gave chase, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with terrifying speed. The tourists watched in horror as the first white-tip shark closed in, its mighty jaws snapping mere feet away from the stern of the boat. Maricel uttered a terrified shriek, her hands flying to her mouth in shock. Quentin, his mind racing, turned to Thomas. He urged Thomas that they needed to cut the engine and let the current carry them away from the sharks. The vibrations and noise only attracted them further. Tomas nodded grimly, his weathered face etched with concern. He killed the engine, and the Cassiana drifted silently, the only sound the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. For a moment it seemed as though the plan had worked. The sharks fell back, their interest seemingly waning. But then, one particularly bold white-tip surged forward, its mighty jaws clamping down on the wooden gunwale, splintering the wood with a sickening crunch. The tourists recoiled in terror, their screams piercing the air. Javier, his camera forgotten, clutched Zarina protectively to his chest, his eyes wide with fear. Quentin, his heart pounding, knew they had to act quickly. They needed a diversion to draw the sharks away from the boat. Without hesitation, the grizzled captain grabbed the bucket of fish guts and began tossing handfuls into the water, creating a trail that led away from the boat. The sharks, their predatory instincts piqued, immediately gave chase, their sleek bodies disappearing into the depths in pursuit of the tantalizing scent. For a brief moment, the group breathed a collective sigh of relief. However, their respite was short-lived. As the last chum dissipated, the sharks began to circle back, their hunger unsated. This time, they were joined by even more white-tips, drawn to the area by the promise of an easy meal. The tourists huddled together, their faces etched with fear as the sharks closed in again. Tomas was already working on the ignition. The engine sputtered and the Cassiana lurched forward, cutting through the water with renewed speed. Time seemed to slow as one of the shark's gaping maw descended, its razor-sharp teeth glinting in the sunlight. Maricel screamed, her hands flying to her face in terror. But at the last moment, a stroke of luck intervened. The shark's trajectory was slightly off, and instead of clamping down on the boat, its jaws closed around the trailing anchor chain. The shark thrashed violently, its powerful body twisting and writhing as it struggled to free itself from the unyielding metal links. The Cassiana surged forward, putting distance between itself and the enraged shark. As the minutes ticked by, the white tips gradually fell behind, their interest waning as the boat reached the safety of the shallower waters near the shore. The tourists disembarked on shaky legs, their faces ashen, and their bodies trembling from the harrowing ordeal they had just endured. Zarina clung to Javier, her eyes wide and haunted, while Quentin and the rest of the group huddled together, drawing strength from their shared survival. Tomas finally broke the silence, his gruff voice tinged with relief. He chuckled, though his laughter held a nervous edge as he claimed the ordeal was close. Quentin nodded solemnly, his brow furrowed with concern, and murmured that they were fortunate to make it back in one piece. Maricel, still visibly shaken, let out a shuddering breath. She whispered that she had never seen anything like that, as the sharks were relentless. As the group made their way back to the safety of the shore, they couldn't help but reflect on the fragile balance between humans and the mighty predators of the sea. What had begun as an innocent eco-tour, a chance to observe the majesty of nature up close, had quickly devolved into a life-or-death struggle against the very creatures they had come to admire. As they went their separate ways, each carrying the scars of their ordeal, they knew they would never again look at the sea with the same sense of wonder and innocence. The eco-tour had gone wrong, but in the process, they gained a newfound respect for the delicate balance between humans and the ancient predators that called the ocean their domain. Jessica Harper dressed with the calm focus that was her trademark at the Coast Guard station near the Farallon Islands. This part of California, known for its swirling water and great white sharks patrolling the depths, was not a stranger to danger. The 32-year-old rescue diver had a strong connection with the ocean. She respected its power and the creatures that lived within. The radio sounded urgent on that cold April morning. It broke the quiet of dawn. A diver was reported to be stranded in shark-infested water near the islands. His equipment had failed, leaving him vulnerable. Jessica and her team jumped on the rescue boat without hesitation. The cool ocean spray washed their faces while they raced to save time. Jessica saw the diver as the boat approached the coordinates. His orange suit was a striking contrast to the deep blue. As she prepared to dive, Jessica could see the diver's relief as they arrived. She was not afraid, but the mission's adrenaline made her heart beat faster. She drew a deep breath and plunged into the icy waters. The underwater world was a dance between shadows and lights. Jessica easily navigated the ocean's murky depths with ease and reached the diver struggling to stay afloat. She smiled calmly through her mask as she approached, reassuring the diver with her presence. However, a shadowy figure loomed above as she secured a harness to him. The commotion attracted a great white shark to circle closer. Jessica's instincts as a rescue diver were strong, and she acted quickly. She placed herself between the diver and the shark as a human shield, prepared for the worst. She met the shark's eyes, ancient and unyielding. Her resolve was hardened at that moment. The shark charged with its massive body, cutting through the water at a terrifying speed. Jessica used her fins, accelerating herself and the diver, but the shark's tooth still found Jessica's leg. She felt a burning pain and a flash of white heat that threatened to plunge her into panic. She never let go of the diver. She pushed them to the surface with a powerful kick and signaled the team above. In a matter of seconds, the boat crew was there to pull Jessica and the diver from the shark's territory. Jessica's leg was bleeding profusely as the rescue boat raced back to shore. The bite was a testament to Jessica's bravery. As medics treated her injuries, the severity of her injury became apparent. Her leg had been badly injured. Her muscles were torn and recovery would take a long time. Her first thought was for the diver who was sitting nearby. His expression was mixed with guilt and gratitude, thanking Jessica for rescuing him. Jessica nodded as her gaze turned to the window, where the ocean was vast and unyielding. She was aware of the risks she would face as a rescue diver, but had no regrets, even though those were now her reality. With her bravery, she saved a person's life. After the news spread, local media hailed her as a heroine. Her story was widely shared and interviews were requested. This sparked a discussion on the dangers rescue divers face in shark-infested waters. Jessica became the focus of a public debate on balancing wildlife protection and human activity. Jessica reflected as she lay on her hospital bed with her leg bandaged. She had been a protector of human life and the Marines, and was now living up to that calling. Her story is one of sacrifice and the delicate dance between man and the natural world, a theme that resonates deeply with those who have ventured into the ocean. Jessica Harper's hospital recovery progressed slowly as the days became weeks. Her courage continued to win the hearts of many people, and she was featured in numerous news outlets discussing the dangers and heroism involved with rescue operations under dangerous conditions. While the media attention was overwhelming, it also started a conversation about safety protocols and how important being prepared is when faced with natural predators such as sharks. During her recovery, Jessica was visited by other Coast Guards and rescue divers from different stations. She even received a visit from the diver she had saved. Each visitor shared their stories and expressed admiration for Jessica's courage. Jessica began working on a proposal to improve safety measures and train rescue divers who work in shark-infested waters. Her proposal included improved protective gear, new technologies to deter sharks, and more training scenarios that simulate shark encounters. She said her proposed measures would help protect divers and make rescue missions safer and more effective. Jessica's initiative received support from diving and safety organizations. She was invited to speak at conferences and seminars, where she told her story and advocated her proposed changes. Her personal experience gave her words a powerful authenticity, and she made a compelling argument for her recommendations. Jessica's battle with her injuries was also a tough one. Though her leg would heal, it would never be the same. She underwent countless hours of physical therapy to gain strength and learn how to walk again slowly. She was constantly reminded of the accident, but she also became more determined not to let it set her back. Jessica finally had the chance to try out the water again. She returned to the ocean accompanied by a group of supportive colleagues, equipped with the new equipment she helped develop. This dive was about her fear, not about saving others. The ocean welcomed Jessica back with open arms. Jessica was a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she submerged in the incredible depths. She felt her confidence return with each stroke. She was aware of the risks, but also her strength and resilience. Jessica was confident she could face any sharks, even though she didn't see one this time. Her return to diving was a personal triumph and a testimony to her recovery. It was also a significant step in promoting safety for rescue operations. Jessica's story continues to inspire, showing that courage and determination can be used to face fears and bring about positive change for a larger community. Jessica's life appeared to be coming full circle as she continued to promote safety when rescue diving. Her journey from a harrowing experience to a beacon for change was a powerful example of how the human spirit can adapt and influence. In 2009, a private charter plane flying over the remote Cook Islands in the South Pacific encountered severe turbulence and storms as it traversed the vast open waters between French Polynesia and Samoa. On board were Zethrid Melik, a wealthy businessman, his wife Giotica and their teenage son Chakor, Marvik Suraj, Zethrid's assistant, Inaya Devi, a family friend, and Elian Cruz, the pilot. Despite Elian's efforts, the plane lost altitude rapidly and crashed into the open ocean. After inflating a life raft and rowing to shore, the 6 survivors were stranded on a remote, uninhabited island. With limited supplies salvaged from the wreckage, they quickly realized the dire nature of their situation. Food and fresh water were scarce, and they had no means of signaling for rescue. Zethrid determined their best hope was to fish from the island's shoreline, using makeshift equipment crafted from the plane's debris. However, their efforts soon attracted an unwanted visitor, a massive bull shark stalking the shallows. On their 4th fishing attempt, Giotica felt a powerful tug on her line as the considerable shark struck, nearly pulling her into the bloody turmoil before the line snapped. The group scattered back from the water's edge, shaken by the close call but undeterred in their need for sustenance. They cautiously resumed fishing over the next few days while one person stood sentry to fend off further attacks. The bull shark grew increasingly aggressive, recognizing their activities as a food source. When it struck again, this time going after Chakor, Elian and Marvik had to intervene to prevent the teen from being pulled into the shark's gaping maw. Realizing that their fishing expeditions were too hazardous to continue, the castaways had to find another means of survival. As they were coping with dehydration beneath the scorching sun, Inaya proposed an ingenious solution, using plastic bottles and salt water to create rudimentary solar stills to extract fresh drinking water through evaporation and condensation. Her plan was a success, providing enough hydration to reinvigorate the group. However, maintaining and expanding the stills would require them to perilously venture close to the shoreline, within reach of the ravenous shark patrolling the shallows. Keeping a vigilant lookout with makeshift spears at the ready, they began digging additional still pits all along the beach, exposing themselves directly to the predator's territory. Their struggle to survive had transformed into a battle of wits and resourcefulness against a relentless, primordial adversary. As the days passed without rescue, the castaways were pitted in an escalating life-or-death contest with the ancient Leviathan lurking just offshore. With their solar stills providing only temporary respite, they would have to take even more risks and push their luck further to outlast the island's resident hunter. On the 18th day, Elian and Marvik were hard at work digging a new still pit when the massive bull shark suddenly emerged from the shallows, its gaping jaws wide to ambush them. Acting quickly, Zethrid grabbed one of the sharpened spears and plunged it into the shark's mouth as it lunged. The strike wasn't deep enough to be fatal, but it was enough to drive the primordial beast back and make it reconsider its easy meal. From then on, the castaways' makeshift defensive tactics kept the vengeful shark at bay while maintaining their still operations. 2 days later, a marine research vessel passing through the area picked up the group's faint emergency signals and found them just in time to airlift them to safety. Though deeply shaken, the island survivors had outwitted and outlasted one of nature's most formidable predators through their perseverance and ingenuity. In the aftermath, the Melek family used their wealth and influence to champion shark conservation efforts and fund further research into sustainable marine ecosystems. Their harrowing ordeal reminded us that despite our capabilities, humanity will always be humbled by nature's incredible, inscrutable forces when we encroach on their territory. A stretch of ocean brimming with life can be found off the rugged South African coast, where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans converge. Here, bold explorers from all corners of the globe come together, enticed by the possibility of exciting interactions with the sea's most powerful creatures. One of them is Colin Thomas, an experienced adventurer who craves adrenaline. Colin and his friends eagerly wait on the ship's deck, filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness, as the sun rises slowly, casting orange and gold hues. Today signifies the conclusion of extensive months of getting ready for a cage diving excursion to ultimately encounter one of the ocean's top predators, the great white shark. Excitement fills the air as the crew gets ready for the day's adventure. Wetsuits are put on, harnesses fastened, and cameras prepared to capture all the thrilling moments. With anticipation gleaming in his eyes, Colin surveys the surroundings, the shining ocean, the rugged coastline in the distance, and the electric atmosphere in the air. While the boat navigates towards the planned dive spot, Colin experiences a familiar adrenaline rush in his body. The salty breeze tousles his hair as he eagerly waits to encounter one of the ocean's most famous creatures while gazing at the horizon. Hours go by in a whirlwind of anticipation and excitement until at last the boat arrives at its destination. The team quickly gets to work, setting up the cage and smoothly lowering it into the water. Colin feels his heart race with anticipation as he prepares for the most thrilling dive of his life. Excitedly, Colin puts on his wetsuit and fastens his harness, getting ready mentally for what's to come. As he enters, the robust and impressive cage stands tall in front of him, prepared to lower him into the ocean's depths. While the cage descends into the water, Colin experiences a strong sense of excitement. Beneath him, he spotted many vibrant fish swimming, yet the predator he sought was nowhere to be found. Suddenly he notices a large silhouette gliding effortlessly beneath the surface of the water. It is a 15-foot great white shark, the dominant predator of the ocean. Colin experiences a moment of fear but quickly becomes fascinated by the shark's impressive strength and elegance. This is exactly what he desired: to witness nature in its finest form, to experience the thrill of being in proximity to such an amazing sea creature. However, as Colin is relishing the underwater world, a negative event occurs. All of a sudden, the cage abruptly shakes, and Colin immediately notices that something is wrong. He starts to panic as he realizes something is wrong. Desperately, he gazes upwards at the surface, where the crew is yelling and making frantic gestures. At that moment, he notices a broken steel line dangling from the side of the cage. A line that was meant to tether the cage to the boat. But it was loose because of a malfunction while the cage was being lowered. He feels his heart beating rapidly in his chest while observing with terror the shark circling nearby, drawn by the commotion and sight of the metal enclosure floating underwater. Colin's mind races as time appears to move slowly, looking for an escape from his underwater situation. The twisted metal bars of the damaged cage serve as a somber reminder of the imminent danger lurking close by, offering little hope. However, Colin remains steadfast in his refusal to surrender. Summoning all his courage, Colin starts to look for a way to get away. His hands frantically search the bars of the cage, looking for a potential weakness in its design that could give him a chance to escape the enclosure. Just when things appear to be at their worst, he suddenly sees a larger gap in the cage's bars, only just wide enough for him to squeeze through. Refusing to give up, Colin forces his way through the narrow opening, disregarding the intense agony of his skin scraping against the merciless metal. He emerges from the cage wreckage, putting in a last burst of energy, his lungs craving air as he kicks fiercely towards the surface. He sees a whirlwind of movement and noise surrounding him, the turbulent water, the far-off calls of the sailors, the unending thumping of his own heart. Finally, he emerges from the water, taking in deep breaths as the comforting sunlight bathes him in a sense of liberation. However, the challenge is not finished yet. The shark, determined to capture its prey, follows Colin as he emerges to the surface. Colin spots the shark's fin sticking out of the water surrounding where he is located. Colin always positions himself facing the shark, understanding its predatory behavior. With every pass, the fin moves nearer to where Colin is positioned. Colin slowly backs away from the shark, ensuring that he is constantly maintaining eye contact with it. From afar, the boat spots Colin drifting in the ocean and zooms towards him. Within moments, the boat reaches Colin, and the crew also spots the circling shark. The boat's captain readies his bang stick, an underwater shotgun, and gets Colin ready, letting him know they are ready to defend against the shark if it decides to strike. All of a sudden, the shark shifts course, detecting the approaching large ship getting closer to its target. Due to the shark's altered behavior, the crew hastily tosses a buoy connected to a rope and swiftly brings Colin back to the deck. After being lifted onto the boat by the crew, Colin slumps from fatigue with his body bruised and beaten but miraculously unharmed. He is still alive. While lying on the deck and looking up at the vast sky, Colin feels deeply grateful for the opportunity to start over. The encounter has transformed him, increasing his understanding of how delicate life is and the marvels of the natural world. A dedicated night surfer, Lucas Mendes felt his soul tugged by the surf on a calm beach in Brazil. Lucas, 28, loved the ocean's gentle lapping against his board and found peace in the lap of the waves. He was a seasoned surfer with a lean body and years of experience in the water. But tonight, a strange unease crept in as he paddled under the moonlight. Lucas's board glided effortlessly through the water, and the moon cast a silver trail before him. While balancing himself to catch the perfect wave, his mind wandered back to his grandfather João, who taught him how to respect the ocean. With a twinkle of wisdom in his eyes, João Mendes would tell him, "The ocean is your friend and foe." The sound of waves breaking in the distance was all that could be heard, along with the occasional nightbird call. Lucas caught a big wave and felt the adrenaline rush every time he flew along the water. As he was about to see another wave return to the shore, his leg was suddenly jerked by a sharp, sudden tug. Panic erupted in his chest as he felt a mighty shark's grip. The attack was quick. Lucas struggled with all his strength as the shark's teeth penetrated his leg. His fists were driven by survival instinct as he punched the shark's rough skin. The shark let go of him after what seemed like an eternity. Lucas, awash in blood and shocked, clung to the board as he paddled to shore. The pain was pulsing through his body. The pain was excruciating. But his wife, Maria, and Sophia, their daughter, gave him the strength to continue. His cries for help broke the silence. Two people walking on the beach ran to his rescue. As they called an ambulance, Lucas replayed his attack, his fear, and how close he was to dying. The doctors were able to save the leg at the hospital, but the damage had been severe. Lucas was lying in his hospital bed surrounded by his worried family when he realized that the physical scars might heal, but the mental ones may never fade. His nights were filled with nightmares about dark waters, and he felt like he was being pulled down. Despite Maria's support, Lucas began to feel a growing distance between himself and the ocean. She sat beside him and held his hand, whispering encouraging words. Lucas started his physical therapy after a few weeks. When he first tried to stand up, lightning-like pain shot through his leg. He was still determined. He thought about his daughter's laugh and the promise that he made to himself to surf again. The psychological scars were deeper. Once a source of solace and happiness, the ocean now appeared as a vast, dangerous entity. Lucas realized he would have to confront his fears to feel whole again. He returned to the sea to not surf, but rather to sit and listen to it. Lucas sat in the sand and watched the waves crash, feeling fear and desire. He remembered his grandfather's words, that the sea teaches us more than we can imagine. Lucas decided to act on that thought. He wouldn't let the shark attack determine his life. He would surf under the moonlight to regain the connection he lost. This decision was the start of a new chapter for his recovery. It would force him to face the deepest fears he harbored. The months rolled by, and Lucas sat at the ocean's edge daily. He felt its pulse and rebuilt the bridge that separated him from the waters that had once cradled his body. The scars on his skin were a reminder of that fateful evening. His physical injuries healed. His emotional recovery took longer, with each step being met by nights of doubt and nightmares of shadowy figures under the moonlit sea. Lucas began to feel a stirring inside as the anniversary of the assault approached, a mixture of fear and defiance. Dr. Helena Sousa encouraged him to set an objective for the day, emphasizing the importance of facing his fears and celebrating his victory over them. Lucas knew exactly what he had to do. He would surf again not just to prove he could, but to reclaim the joy and freedom of surfing he once experienced. The preparation for the night started weeks in advance. Lucas began by taking small steps and wading in the shallow water, feeling the familiar touch of the ocean against his legs. Maria was there for him, always, and often joined him on the beach, where Sophia splashed around in the water, building sand castles. Her laughter soothed his frayed nerves. Lucas stood on the edge of Praia da Pipa Beach with his surfboard in his arms the night before the anniversary. The moon looked like a crescent of silver, just as it had when he had gone through his ordeal. He felt his heart pound with fear and an increasing sense of victory against the memories that had attempted to chain him. Lucas waded into the water. The familiar chill wrapped around him like a longtime friend. As he paddled, his muscles began remembering their old rhythm, and a calmness washed over him. He was no longer the man who was attacked. He was more robust and more resilient. Lucas paddled with determination and steadied his body as the first wave approached. He stood, balancing his weight with an ease that belied his rapid heartbeat. The wave lifted him like a giant gentleman. The small group of friends and family who supported him cheered as he rode to the shore. Lucas was relieved to return to the beach, feeling like the waves had lifted some of the darkness from him. He hugged Maria, whose presence had been a constant force on his turbulent journey. Sophia ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs, her excitement evident in her actions. She looked up at him with eyes full of wonder and magic, imagining him surfing the moon. Lucas and his family sat around a small fire that night. The ocean seemed to them less like a monster than a friend who taught him an important lesson. The sea had forever changed him. He knew it would be a long road back to recovery. He also knew that each time he faced waves, he could regain a part of himself he thought he lost. Lucas Mendez's story, in which he faced the jaws and depths of his fears, will be told for many years at Praia da Pipa. His story is not only a story of survival, it's also a testament to how the human spirit can overcome and find renewal at the same place that brought it to its knees. Rusty Ludlow, 48 years old and an experienced deep-sea diver, lives in the coastal city of Durban, South Africa, on the beautiful shores of the Indian Ocean. After spending his whole life traveling the sea, Rusty has strong connections to Durban. Raised in this maritime center since birth, his enduring interest in delving into the depths of the ocean has been a lifelong endeavor. The busy harbor of the city was filled with hustle and bustle. with fishing vessels and cargo ships coming and going, their crews getting ready for voyages across the ocean. However, among the busy city life, there was a peaceful and beautiful aspect to discover on Durban's shoreline. Untouched shores extended beyond the horizon, with their shining sands calling out to both beachgoers and surfers. Further out from the coastline, the mysterious depths of the Indian Ocean's dark blue waters contained countless secrets, just waiting to be explored by the courageous few willing to explore them. In the summer of 2000, Rusty decided to go on a solo adventure to investigate an enigmatic underwater cave system near the shore. It was a journey he had been longing for, an opportunity to reveal the hidden mysteries of the ocean depths. Rusty experienced a blend of both anticipation and anxiety as he readied himself for his journey. Despite being aware of the risks hidden in the abyss, his curiosity propelled him to venture onward, compelling him to expand the limits of discovery. Rusty carefully inspected his gear, making sure his oxygen tank was completely filled, and his diving suit was in excellent shape. Before heading into the ocean, he carefully placed all his equipment into his reliable dive bag, making sure everything was packed correctly. Rusty plunged underwater as the bright sun casts a shimmering glow on the water's surface above. While he went deeper down, the sunlight started to disappear and was soon replaced by the unsettling darkness of the underwater realm. The cave system's entrance stood out in front, casting a dark shadow in the deep blue waters. Rusty experienced a mix of excitement and fear as he neared the unknown, pulling him further into its depths. Deep within the cave, Rusty encountered a complex network of tunnels and rooms, with each one becoming increasingly enigmatic. The absolute quiet was overwhelming, only interrupted by his breathing and occasional water droplets falling from the cave roof. Rusty proceeded with caution, staying alert as he maneuvered through the winding passages. As he was moving forward, Rusty sensed movement shifting in his peripheral vision. He spun around, feeling his heart race in his chest as he scanned the darkness for any indication of danger. However, there was only a spiral of silt below the water, indicating activity in the vicinity. Rusty ignored the feeling of unease, thinking it was just nerves as he ventured deeper into the cave. Rusty was completely clueless that a 12-foot-long tiger shark was lurking in the shadows, its icy gaze fixed on him with predatory intent. Tiger sharks were well known for their relentless appetite and fearless attitude. These relentless predators would eat anything in their path. While Rusty moved through the cave, he couldn't get rid of the sensation of someone watching him. Each shadow appeared to contain a concealed peril, every echo a possible risk. Moving fast, he hurriedly searched for an escape route through the maze-like corridors, his heart pounding. Suddenly, a massive tiger shark appeared before him, effortlessly gliding through the water with deadly precision. Rusty came to a sudden halt, his breath catching in his throat as he locked eyes with the predator's cold, unyielding gaze. In a sudden, quick movement, the shark quickly moved forward, snapping its jaws closed just a few inches away from Rusty's legs. With his heart racing, Rusty kicked desperately to create a gap between him and the persistent predator. The shark's teeth lightly touched Rusty's diving suit, creating rough tears and causing blood to form small clouds of crimson in the water. Rusty felt a sudden jolt of pain in his leg, but he ignored it and concentrated on getting away from the danger approaching from behind. However, the shark kept going without stopping, its strong tail pushing it forward with unstoppable force. Rusty could sense the surge of water as the shark approached, its sharp teeth shining in the cave's faint light. Desperate to stay alive, Rusty quickly entered a tight tunnel, feeling the rough walls scraping against his diving gear and his skin as he passed through. The shark swam closely behind, its huge body occupying the tunnel, creating a feeling of suffocating fear. Rusty's heart pounded with fear as he dove further into the shadows, feeling his lungs ache for oxygen. The tunnel appeared to go on endlessly, curving and winding without a visible end. At the moment he believed he couldn't continue, Rusty noticed a dim shine of light in the distance. With a sense of renewed hope, he continued to propel himself forward despite his muscles protesting against the overwhelming exhaustion. At last, Rusty made his way out of the tunnel into a spacious chamber, the journey feeling endless. Struggling to breathe, he frantically scanned the area, seeking any indication of the shark. However, much to his comfort, the creature was not visible anywhere. Rusty's heart kept pounding in his chest as he emerged back to the surface, his mind reeling from the adrenaline-fueled intense experience. Emerging from the water, he took a deep breath of the clean air, experiencing a wave of relief washing over him. Upon returning to land, Rusty fell onto the sandy shore, his body shaking from both fatigue and relief. He had braved the perils of the ocean and triumphed, a story he would remember for the rest of his life. In March 1995, a group of friends gathered for a beach bonfire celebration along the beautiful garden route in South Africa, where laughter, crackling fire, and clinking beer bottles filled the air on a warm summer evening. They had been looking forward to this evening with excitement for weeks, a chance to unwind and enjoy each other's company in the peaceful coastal environment. Tony Reeves, one of the partygoers, had a passion for life that was only equaled by his love of drinking. As the evening progressed and the beverages continued to be served, Tony realized he was getting more drunk by the minute. The surroundings appeared blurred and unsteady as he walked towards the ocean to take a dip and relieve himself. He couldn't even walk in a straight line as he pressed on until his friends' laughter faded into the background. Tony's friends observed with playful smiles as he bravely entered the water, displaying unsteady movements and filling the night with his laughter. They shouted words of encouragement, cheering him on as he vanished into the ocean's dark depths. However, as Tony ventured further into the water, he began to feel a sense of discomfort settling over him, momentarily bringing him back to a serious state. The chill of the ocean was a sharp difference from the heat of the fire nearby, causing him to feel a shiver run down his back. The shift in temperature was a welcome feeling as Tony continued forward with his senses dulled and judgment clouded by alcohol. While Tony was swimming and relaxing, a huge shadow appeared from the deep waters, a dark outline that appeared to form out of the darkness. Tony's laughter abruptly stopped in his throat, frozen in place, with his heart thumping loudly in his chest. As the shadow expanded, it eventually materialized into a 13-foot great white shark, attracted by the disturbance and the smell of urine in the water. Without hesitation, the shark quickly thrust itself forward, clamping its enormous jaws around Tony's leg with bone-crushing force. The sound of pure agony and Tony's scream cut through the night air. Tony's friends frantically tried to understand the chaotic situation unfolding on the beach. They were filled with panic and fear as they witnessed in terror the shark pulling Tony deeper into the ocean, its sharp teeth cutting through his flesh and bone with ruthless precision. Following the initial shock, a frantic rush ensued as everyone on the beach hurried towards the water to assist Tony. They grasped the urgency, realizing they couldn't simply stand by as their friend faced the ruthless predator. Fueled by adrenaline, they sprang into action, their minds racing amidst the overwhelming panic. Alert and quick-thinking, Carl Sanders wasted no time in springing into action. Scanning the beach for any useful tool, he spotted the emergency kit they had brought along. Carl hurriedly seized an underwater flare before rushing to the water to assist in the rescue. At the same time, Bobby Donovan and Ricky Stewart, known for being the best swimmers in the group, took immediate action. Recognizing the severity of the situation, they were ready to take any required steps to save Tony. Along with Bobby and Ricky, Carl hurried into the water, firmly holding onto the flare, his hands shaking with a combination of fear and determination. Using a steady breath, he lit the flare and plunged it into the water, temporarily confusing the shark with its strong brightness. At that critical moment, the predator let go of Tony, giving him the opportunity to escape. Seizing the opportunity, Bobby and Ricky swiftly sprang into action, their powerful strokes propelling them toward Tony. They reached him just as the shark turned back, its primal instincts driving it to pursue the flare as it drifted away from the group. Bobby and Ricky, fueled by desperation, grabbed Tony's limp body with all their might, straining their muscles to drag him back to the shore. The group moved at a frantic pace, knowing well of the constant threat of the shark lurking just below the surface. However, they didn't give in. Their thoughts concentrated entirely on one objective: bringing Tony back to the shore safely. The group on the shore quickly moved to assist in pulling him onto the sandy beach as they arrived safely at the shoreline. His leg injuries were so serious that the flesh was torn and mangled beyond any chance of recognition. Blood mixed with salt water, leaving behind a gruesome path that dyed the coastline in crimson hues. Even when chaos and panic surrounded them, Tony's friends took quick and decisive action, promptly using makeshift tourniquets on his injured leg in a frantic effort to stop the bleeding. Throughout the journey to the hospital, Tony grappled with a mix of agony and confusion. Hours seemed to stretch on as he underwent surgery. With skilled precision, the doctors worked tirelessly to salvage his leg. Finally, a weary surgeon emerged with the solemn news. Tony's leg had been surgically amputated below the knee. With the constant support of his friends, Tony started his journey towards recovery. Even with the challenges he faced, he maintained a resilient attitude. Relearning how to walk with a prosthetic limb, he proceeded cautiously, supported by the care and determination of his friends. Tony came out of his harrowing experience as a resilient survivor, discovering inner strength and a strong bond with his friends, who demonstrated their loyalty by continuing to support him, even at the expense of their safety. Haruto has been fishing the Hokkaido coast for over 50 years. He has observed the changing sea, shifting currents, and dwindling fish from the worn-out docks in his small fishing community. Every morning he pushes his wooden boat out into the waves, determined to hold on to the life he knows and his forefathers' life. Haruto's boat was loaded with nets and lines on a cold morning in early spring. As the sun slowly rose above the horizon, the eastern sky was painted in streaks of purple and orange. Haruto, whose hands were atrophied and calloused after years of hard labor, could handle the gear quickly. His fishing was more than just a livelihood. It was also his connection to history, and a way to resist the relentless march of technology and time that threatened to change his world. Haruto's sea became choppy as he sailed further away from the shore. This was a sign that the marine habitats had changed due to shifting undercurrents. He dropped his fishing nets at a spot that was a favorite in the past. Today, as on many other days in recent months, the nets were almost empty. Haruto sighed and decided to go deeper despite the increased number of sharks drawn to the shore by stronger currents. He moved his boat further out and scanned the deep blue below him. Haruto was not warned when a colossal shape emerged from the depths. Its dark silhouette was unmistakable, a great white shark. This shark was much more giant than anything Haruto had ever seen before. The shark struck his boat before he had time to react. The impact was violent, shaking the ship violently and sending wood splinters into the air. Haruto fell and caught himself on the side as water started to seep into the damaged hull. The shark circled back, its dorsal blade slicing the water like a knife. Haruto was in danger. The boat was rapidly taking on water, and Haruto was far away from help. Haruto had to choose as the waves raged around him, and his boat began to listen. He could call for help, but it might be too late. He could either try to repair enough damage to make it to shore. He gathered his courage and grabbed the patching kit he always kept on board in case of emergency. The shark continued to brush against the boat as he worked. Haruto prayed that the patch would last long enough to return him to his village. The boat filled with water as each minute passed, testing his repair and spirit. This was more than a fight for survival. It was also a testimony to the resolve of an elderly fisherman to maintain his lifestyle in a changing world. Haruto wasn't ready to abandon the tradition that had defined his family over generations. He knew this moment was critical for him and the entire community that relied on the sea to survive and represent themselves. Haruto's fingers moved quickly, and the sea spray stung him as he struggled to keep his boat on its feet. Each patch was a desperate attempt to beat time and nature. The shark circled, possibly curious or confused at the boat's persistent approach. Its dark fin was a constant reminder that danger lay below. Haruto was occupied with his work when he began to think about his village. For centuries, the community relied on oceans for food, a sense of identity and purpose. He thought about the young people who had fled to the cities in search of a life less dependent on nature. Haruto was not just patching up his boat, but also trying to repair a way of life drifting with the tides. Haruto took advantage of the calm created by the temporary securing of the hull. The old gears groaned in protest as he started the engine and guided his vessel home. Each wave threatened his makeshift repairs. He watched the water closely, aware that the shark might reappear any minute. Relief washed over him as the coast finally came into view. Despite the boat's saturated condition, which barely responded to his commands, it was still progressing. Familiar landmarks like the rocky outcrops and the old lighthouse appeared on the horizon, guiding him back just as they had guided his father and grandfather before him. Haruto's return to the harbor was not unnoticed. They gathered on the dock after a distress signal that he had sent out alerted them to his plight. The villagers rushed to his aid, helping him fix the boat and treating his minor injuries. In the chaos, Haruto told his story: the shark attack, the damaged boat, and the terrifying return. The story spread fast, reminding everyone of the dangers they faced in a changing world. The village was moved by Haruto's story and called a meeting. The shark incident and the increasing frequency of predator encounters led to a discussion on the future. The changing ocean conditions are a threat and a call for adaptation. The community decided to invest in more durable boats with safety features that can withstand unexpected encounters. It also decided to diversify its fishing practices by incorporating aquaculture, which could sustain them and not rely on the unpredictable open sea. The village also contacted marine scientists to understand better sharks' behavior and that of other aquatic life. They hoped this knowledge would help them coexist peacefully with creatures of the sea. Haruto was once the symbol of old ways. He became a proponent of a new approach. He told his story to many people, highlighting the importance of adapting and respecting the ocean's strength. His experience catalyzed change, inspiring others to reconsider their relationship with the sea. Years later, the village was transformed. The town was now safer, more resilient, and more sustainable. Haruto is now older and still fishes, but with more caution. He would often sit by the shore and watch the newer, more robust boats navigate the same waters he used to roam freely in. He left a legacy that was more than just survival. It was a movement to ensure the community's survival in harmony with nature.